The top four races heating up. People are at the start of the season. People were saying it's definitely going to be Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Arsenal might still end up that way to be honest. But Chelsea are in trouble. Sixth in the league, one win in their last five, 30 goals conceded, which is absurd. What has happened to them?
Sixth in the league, but just 1 point off top four. So I don't think it's.
Thanks, Kim.
I don't think it's the. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think. I mean, I want to say it was bound to happen because they're a young squad, but I do think about 2 months ago I was saying Chelsea would win the league.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to go back in the archives and realise that what I've said. But I think they are a young squad, aren't they? They've never really played together. They've got a new manager in who's clearly got them playing in the right way. But I just think in those big games, at those big moments, they probably haven't got enough. I think the defence is a big problem. I don't think any combination of the two centre-backs is strong enough, particularly when you look at Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest. Newcastle's is even better. I think Villa's is better. So I think they've got a poor centre-back pairing, and they've also got a goalkeeper who does make quite a lot of mistakes quite regularly. And then Nicholas Jackson up front as well. So you've got two ends of the pitch, really, where I think they could be faring better. I think Nicholas Jackson is a lot better than people give him credit for, and I think there's a bit of a hangover with how poor he was last year, and people have taken that into this season. I think he's been okay, but I think he does still miss quite a lot of big chances, which is obviously hurting Chelsea. I do feel confident that they will break into the top four come the end of the season, though.
I think when the title talk happened, that meant Chelsea were now suddenly, people were expecting things of them that were not realistic. And that then, since then, has led to this form. I think since Enzo Maresca said we're not title contenders, I think they've won 1 or 2 in 6.
That's crazy.
So that's pressure, obviously. Like that's pressure's eating them alive. I think Noni Madueke had an interview where he said, like, we're just going to try and win any game we can. And they haven't won many. So they're only, as you very rightfully said, only a point off fourth. And I think maybe they're having the dip at the exact right time. Newcastle are on the opposite end. They're having an unbelievable run. Bar that Bournemouth game, they have been absolutely superb. They're in fifth, level with Man City. Do you think they could break in the top four?
Well, I think they've got what Chelsea don't have, and that's a striker who knows exactly where the goal is. I would love him so much, Alexander Isak, incredible footballer, as we all know. And he just looks to be having almost a Salah-esque patch of form where every single game he's looking and he will score at least 1, if not 2. And the big problem Chelsea have with Jackson is not just the fact that he's missing big chances, but he's missing big chances at key moments. There was that time in the City game where Palmer squared it to Jackson, and I think it was a really poor pass by Palmer, but also a striker with more confidence than Jackson could have taken that on his left foot, even at a stretch, which makes the game 2-0, makes it a different game.
I worry for Newcastle a little bit because I just don't know if they've got enough quality all over the pitch to get in the top four. I said it before the Bournemouth game. I think, as you rightly mentioned in another video, that probably wasn't a 4-1 game. I think the XG was something like 2 to Bournemouth. So I don't think you should read too much into that, but I just think that they're relying on a lot of players playing way above themselves. And they have been for a couple of seasons. You think of Jacob Murphy, an unbelievable player, right? The way that he's playing at the moment, but you're relying on him playing above and beyond himself, which I think he is, no disrespect to him, for the rest of the season. And there are a couple other players like that as well. I think if you look at Newcastle's 11 compared to Chelsea's 11, obviously Chelsea's cost about 3 times as much as well. And I do think that Newcastle rely on individual brilliance probably more than Chelsea, probably more than Forest. And then the two teams below them as well, in Bournemouth and Villa, I think they suffer the same affliction against those two.
It's interesting you say that, though, about they have been relying on individual brilliance for a few seasons now, though, because at what point does it become a system thing where the system is maximising these players like Jacob Murphy? And you say they need him to perform. To be honest, if Jacob Murphy doesn't perform, Gordon can go to the right and Harvey Barnes can come in. So I know they don't have the same superstars, same big names, but they've got a very rock-solid squad who's now had lots of time to build together and grow together. So I think there's just going to be a lot more consistency in Newcastle, whereas a team like Chelsea, who have players like Nkunku, who are in and out of the team, out of favour. They've got people like Neto who will be there for the Conference League, and then the manager will come in, ask him to come and play for the league, and his head doesn't seem to be there because there's a really weird situation at Chelsea with this whole two teams thing, and I think it's starting to catch up with them a little bit, but also teams are just finding them out a little bit because they were such an unknown entity earlier in the season.
There's also two other teams in the race, Bournemouth and Forest. Now, Forest are interesting because it was, again, similar to Chelsea. It wasn't that many weeks ago. I was sat on a plane when they were playing Liverpool, and my timeline said, if Forest win this, they're title contenders. If Forest win this, they're title contenders. Didn't win that game. They have won 3 of their last 5. They're on 44 points, but it feels like because of the season City have had, City are only 3 points behind them. Forest haven't quite got enough distance, I think, in the period where they've been really, really good. They've only scored 33 goals as well, which isn't a lot of goals in comparison to the other current top 7. And they lost 5-0 to Bournemouth. Are they in trouble?
Nah, that was a weird game. That was another weird game. And you take that away, and I think Forest... I know you can't say take that away. I know if your grandmother wheel should be a bike and all that. But if you take those 5 goals away, they're the second least conceding team. And I think they're really, really hard to play against Forest. I think, obviously, what Nuno's done, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I don't even think he was harshly treated at Spurs. I think he was just poor at Spurs. And I don't think anyone expected him to come into Forest and do this good of a job. I think they've been absolutely exceptional, and I don't think there's any reason why they can't be there or thereabouts. I just think in the same way as with Newcastle, and I don't want it to be the case, from a neutral's perspective, obviously I would much rather teams like Forest and Newcastle be in the top 4 ahead of Chelsea's, Arsenal and Liverpool, obviously not ahead of Manchester City. But I do think what you say there is a good point. I think the fact that Forest have had such an unbelievable season, and people were... probably Riley talking about them being in a title race. I don't think anyone really believed it. But the fact that they're only 3 points ahead of Manchester City, and that could change it can change in a week, can't it? I think the fact that they haven't put enough distance between themselves probably means they'll just miss out.
And then there's Bournemouth, everyone's second favourite team in the league. Iraola's doing an unbelievable job. So many injuries, playing without a recognised striker, and they've still scored 17 in their last 5 matches, all comps. They're on 40 points, only a point off 4th. Is this a case of they're running hot, potentially? Or is this a case of this is just a very good team and they might end up pushing top 4 all the way?
Well, as a man who loves the underlying numbers, they have actually been very good all season. All season, their numbers have been kind of supporting this performance. And the results earlier this season weren't as hot as they are now. But they have been performing quietly. And we've spoken already about the injuries that they're already plagued with. Once some of those players start to come back, considering they don't have Europe this season, I see no reason why they won't be there or thereabouts. As crazy as that is to say.
That's madness. And on their budget.
Maybe I'll be looking silly at the end of the season, but I think they'll be pushing it close.
I think it's really important that Bournemouth get a European slot, because I feel like this is one of those teams where everything is just working this season. The players and the manager are working really well together. And I do think at the end of the season, as football is, and we know that football is a big money business, the manager might go, he might go to a bigger club. A lot of the players will probably leave. I do think Bournemouth are one of those teams at the end of the season will be handpicked, especially if they don't at least get into the Europa Conference or the Europa League, because I do think that European factor will have a bearing on whether players stay and whether they can buy replacements if they leave. So I actually think for Bournemouth, out of any of the teams on this list, it's really, really important that they get into Europe, because I do think that they are going to be, pardon the pun, cherry-picked at the end of the season.
Nice. All right, top 4 predictions. I'll go first. I think it will be, in no particular order, Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea. Boring. I know, boring. Go on, James.
I say with a heavy heart, I think Liverpool win the title. So I think I'll go Liverpool, Arsenal, City, and I will sneak in Newcastle. I think they're solid.
It's so boring, but I do just think it's going to be Liverpool, Arsenal, City and Chelsea. I hope it's not. I hope Newcastle or Forest or Bournemouth slip in there, but I'm not sure.